Today, I was taking my lunch, pulled up my phone, and saw what I thought was a fan edit of Tyler Hoechlin's Superman. But apparently, it's not a fan edit. The first look at Superman, no subtitle. I just want to say, there's some key takeaway points here. First, I think what everyone hones in on is how weirdly cheap and not real at all the background looks. I'm a little shocked. As far as first looks go, they usually put like some spice in it. They really kind of want to drum up some interest. So this was something I'm trying to rationalize why you would put out a photo that looks like it was like the background almost looks like an AI generated, just bland color thing. It doesn't really do anything. And the way he looks, like Superman's putting on his costume, and there's what looks like a world-ending event happening. He's just kind of slowly putting on his boots. And I'm not trying to read too much into it. There's almost no chance that this is an actual scene in the movie. It's just a promo photo. Unlike Man of Steel, which showcased the suit by having Henry slammed into a safe vault, sort of like in that Justice League Unlimited episode where he fights Shazam. And that's actually him fighting Feora in Smallville. But that was a set photo. That wasn't someone sitting in front of a green screen and you make something in Adobe After Effects or whatever. A lot of people are pointing out the suit is very dark and kind of colorless. And the first image tease hadn't shown us a lot. It showed us it had sort of like a Spalding basketball texture, and I know a lot of people use that as an insult. I've always liked that. I have a lot of nostalgia for the feel and the sound of a basketball or even a dodgeball. So for me, that was never a negative. It just reminds me of, playing sports with friends. But it was shocking. I thought it was like Tyler's Supergirl suit, not even his Superman and Lois suit, because those boots looked so similar. And, for what it's worth, I think David's hair looks good. I think, his face, he looks like a Superman, But I said it when Fortnite did it, I'll say it again. The New 52 collar and red trunks do not go together. You can either be a highly detailed alien costume, or you can be a retro throwback costume, but you cannot straddle the fence and do both, or your nuts are going to get crunched. And this is a crunchy nut situation. With Tyler's suit, right? For Supergirl, no collar. Not a ton of extra detail, honestly, and it kind of was, in an interesting way, meant to mirror Supergirl's costume, as opposed to Supergirl's costume mirroring Superman's, because they'd designed Supergirl's costume for season 1 already. Tyler didn't show up till season 2. Big fan of his, by the way. Brandon Routh. I don't love his Superman Returns costume, and I think that's another example of over-designing what's supposed to look simple. But in his CW Crisis event costume, his costume looks very simple and clean, and it just works. Like, it's striking, it's bold, and I just want to point out the muscle sculpt that they did for that one looks amazing. It's honestly up there, I think, with like Henry's and Man of Steel. I really, really like it. Of course, you go back to Chris Reeves' costume back in the day, and it looks simple now because it's filmed on very old film stock, very old film camera lens. Detail doesn't translate super duper well. But for the time, the materials they were using were like cutting edge. This was like Star Trek, the original series era. So anything that wasn't a cotton sweater was kind of an enormous breakthrough. So it's interesting to see the way that this is, transformed and changed throughout the iterations. I think when people who don't like Henry Cavill's movies or, Zack Snyder movies in general, and Henry Cavill just kind of gets grouped in with that, I think generally when people say, oh, this is bad, what they're saying is this is a very high level of skill and, the execution is technically proficient in a direction that they don't like. You can't argue that Michael Wilkinson's Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman suits are bad. you could say that you don't like them, but on a technical level, I mean, I know there's some people who nitpick, oh, this blue should have been this color. I wish it had had trunks. You know, small things that they just wish would have been done, but that's not saying it was poorly made. That's saying that their input would have pushed it in a slightly different direction. But technically, you know, the fabrication is amazing. And I think it's pretty clear that this is not a situation where that is the case for whoever did the Superman suit. I think it's the Guardians of the Galaxy costumer, which, to be fair, this does look better than the Guardians of the Galaxy costumes, which were all like CW leather. I don't understand why everyone looks like they're wearing plastic in those movies. Even the fans of James Gunn and the people who sort of position themselves, whatever the opposite of what they think Zack Snyder fans will say, that's their position. Even they are sort of like, this one is not so great. The thickness of the costume you can see around his wrists is really thick. And it's bunching up anytime he moves. And it makes me wonder, you know, we've known that Warner Brothers is sort of underwater financially, and that the fat lady's about to sing. And I think a little over a year, maybe two, they have to pay off a large portion of their $50 billion debt. That is something that, you know, even if this new Superman movie was the most profitable Superman movie ever, if it like doubled Man of Steel or Batman vs. Superman, it was like a $2 billion movie. That isn't going to save Warner Brothers. And I wonder, are the finances really already starting to impact the production? You know, this person who made this, if they did work for Marvel, they've made costumes that can move. They know the process. So were they rushed? Like, is this movie being pushed ahead, or are they not being rushed? Did they have all the money they asked for? Did they have all the time that they said they would need? And this is just the best they can do. Like, I'm not saying they as in I don't remember the name of the production designer. I mean the entirety of this production, the people in charge, James Gunn and everyone he's chosen. It's just kind of an interesting situation, because usually whenever you're arguing something, right, like Superman and Lois did Doomsday, and he looked very similar to Batman vs. Superman's Doomsday. And people argued back and forth which was better. And I think in the back of everyone's mind, they were like, okay, well, one's a much cheaper budget, but also has been made, you know, almost 9 years later. Technology has evolved. So what are the pros and the cons of that situation? The context of the story. One of them was Bizarro, and now he's Doomsday. One of them was Zod, and now he's Doomsday. What's the difference? What's going on? The costumes that Tyler and Henry wear. Which one do you prefer? And it was more of a debate of preference more than quality, because we could tell that these were two very different situations. And me personally, I enjoyed the heck out of both. In fact, you can see on my channel, I did an edit putting Hans Zimmer music to the Superman Doomsday fight, because I love Hans Zimmer's music. I love Tyler's Superman. I love Superman and Lois. I love Henry Cavill's Superman movies. So it seemed appropriate. This is a situation where it feels like people just kind of know this sucks. And it's almost not fun. Like, you can feel, like, you know, like when you'll argue with someone and you're in the room together, and then someone crosses a line and it feels like someone sucked the air out of it, and everyone's like, oh, like the mood has shifted. That's this. This is a situation where everyone's like, ha ha ha, Zack Snyder is done, dead universe, blah, blah, blah. And now it's like, oh God, this looks worse than the CW. In fact, I'm going to put up a couple promos of Tyler's Superman. Both Supergirl and Superman and Lois from the CW. And we'll compare it to the first look here of Cornbread as Superman. You can tell there's a difference in production quality. That's interesting. And I don't have an answer as to why. I just think it's very fascinating. You can obviously do the comparisons between Man of Steel and this, which are probably technically more appropriate since they're both flagship franchise-launching Superman solo movies, solo in huge quotations or with an enormous asterisk, given the scope of Superman no subtitles, ballooning cast. But I'm really curious, like, what do you think? Because, you know, I know people who don't necessarily like a movie, but they'll like a design. So I'm curious, if even if you're not on board with the DCU, what do you think of the costume? Do you actually think it works? Are you interested in the way this is working out, in the way, like, do you like the direction they're going? Are you surprised by anything? Are you impressed? How do you think that sort of Kingdom Come logo slapped on the new 52 costume, but with retro vintage underpants, how does that gel for you? Is it clicking? Is it not? Why? Why not? I'm curious because the art is subjective. There's no right or wrong answer, but it does look like this has a less refined production process. You know, this is something you'd see in a cosplay. You see it all the time in cosplays. A tight-fitting suit, but you lift your arms, or you cross your arms, and it bunches up around the collar. Tyler's Supergirl costume did that a lot too, in the first season that he was showing up in cameos and such. So, how come they didn't catch that? Why is it staying in? You know, when Anthony Mackie took over the role of Captain America, his Captain America costume bunched up a lot on the sort of half cowl, and so they digitally fixed all of that. They just smoothed it out in post. Do you think there's a reason that they're not doing that for Superman no subtitle? Should they do it for Superman no subtitle? Should they try and fix the suit? Is it too late? Do you think it even needs to be fixed? Again, no right or wrong answer, but it is, and maybe I'm crazy, right? Maybe I'm just super biased and I like all of these other Superman costumes and I don't like this new one. Maybe it's just not clicking for me. There are things I like. I do think the texture works with like the sort of dirt and everything they've put on him. Like, I think that's a cool effect. I do. And I think his hair looks good. Like I said, I've never loved the mixture of overly designed blue suit, simplified red trunks. I think that looks like garbage. But, you know, hey, maybe in motion the suit looks really good. But I think when you're doing a promo and you're showing your first image the day after Henry Cavill's birthday, I might add, so at least they had the common decency to wait a day this time. So I guess he's grown. He waited 24 hours. I think when you're saying, hey, I know that you didn't get to finish your last thing, but you should hop ship and get onto this one, you really need to put a good foot forward. And I don't know that they did this time. So let me know what you think. Is this better or worse than Tyler or Brandon or Henry's Superman suits? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? What's your feelings on the trajectory and the tone around Superman no subtitle moving forward? Do you think that the sort of fanboyism is still going to stick, or do you think that some people are realizing that they may have hopped onto a sinking ship? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below.